Hello and welcome aboard. Joe Holbrook here, the Cloud Tech Guy. I wanted to do a quick shout out and let y'all know I took the CBDH exam. And for those that have followed me, you know I do a lot on the CBSA exam as well. Let's talk about the top 10 things you need to know for this exam. Let's just clarify a few things before we get started. This exam is actually pretty challenging. It is a developer-focused exam. Now, if you're a developer in Golang or JavaScript, you should do pretty well on this. As far as the programming part, if you're not familiar with Hyperledger, then you have some work to do to get up to speed. I'm going to go through the top 10 and just give you an idea of what I saw, what I'd recommend. I also teach this course as well for Pearson, and this course will be released as well on Pearson Safari in February 2019. It's been fully recorded. It's 8 hours of pure fun. All right, let's talk about the exam. It is 70 questions. It is a multiple choice format, 90 minutes, and it costs $300. Yes, my friends, that's a little bit pricey, but again, a lot of other exams are even more than that. All right, so let's talk about a few things about the exam before I get into the top 10. The first thing I want to clarify is that it seemed like this exam, as compared to the CBSA exam, was a little bit more rushed out. There are certainly typos, quite a bit of them. I just shouldn't say quite a bit. I think they may not be like typos in the sense that it seemed like that the author of the exam did not speak English as a primary language, and it seemed like there was a lot of areas that I would see typically when I was an ESOL instructor, for that matter. So I'm guessing that might have been part of the issue, but it was definitely clear, though, that it could have been written somewhat better. It wasn't a bad exam, but there's room for improvement, I'll be honest. With that said, the exam was clearly targeting folks that were developers, mainly JavaScript, perhaps some Golang as well. But in general, it was really wanting to know, did you know areas around descriptors, and did you know areas such as defining resources and how to do that and how to resolve error codes. I'll talk about specific details. I got some pictures and snapshots of code as well in here. But basically, just think about it as 30% of the exam was really focused on coding, debug, and syntax error resolution. 30%. So what does that mean? Well, if you don't know how to program, then you have a good chance of failing this exam. That's my thought. Now, as long as you get a few of those right, you should be okay if you get everything else right, but it seemed like it was about 30%. That's just, a guesstimate. I didn't count them exactly, but there was quite a bit. A lot of code questions and a lot of diagrams with snippets of code. And you have it just like you would get similar to here. They give you a question and you'd have to go over here to the code and try to answer appropriately. Basically, what does this snippet of code do here? Or why is this snippet pointing an error? Or what does this this arrow mean, or what does this 0 mean? These are the things that you're going to need to know for this exam. Okay, the first thing is you need to know Hyperledger Composer. This is Hyperledger's development baby. You have to know it. This is very similar to basically, again, Ethereum, Solidity, and knowing a lot of other tool sets as well with Ethereum, such as MetaMask and others. So just be aware. That is what you should expect. Know the different file types like a BNA, a query, and a model file. Understand too, Composer is a framework. These are pretty straightforward, but you have to go to Composer, play around with it. What can you do? Can you import? Can you export from it? These are things you're going to see. Number two, I sort of covered that briefly here earlier. I sort of skipped ahead, but just realize you need to know what the syntaxes mean, but also what happens if you get an error, how do you resolve the error, so on and so on. Okay. Number three, you have to know what the blockchain is, why it is, how many jobs it's going to kill, components as well. When I say components, understand the difference between a ledger, distributed ledger for that matter, but also to understand consensus and other facets of the blockchain. There actually was not a question on how many jobs it will kill, just sort of threw that in there to see if people are paying attention. Okay. Now, number four, Hyperledger fabric. Ledger. You need to know the ledger and the pieces, the parts, how transactions are written to it. If you look at the little table I put below there, make sure you understand what is immutable and what is not. Understand the database options. Can you use LevelDB or can you use CouchDB? And what about the transaction logs? Can that be CouchDB or is it only the StateDB? These are things you want to know. Also, too, know the value of why you want to use CouchDB. Is it for complex query, perhaps? Let's think about that. Again, these are some of the things you want to know before you take the exam. What is a channel? Know what a channel is, know why you want to use it. Just be aware, too, a channel, I won't tell you exactly what you're going to see on the test, but know the problem that a channel can solve. Is it security? Is it privacy? Is it performance? What does a channel resolve? But also, too, if you deploy a channel and you have peers that might be part of several channels, how does that affect the ledger? You need to know little details like that. Nodes. You need to know that, again, some humor in here. Nodes are not being pushed by liberals. What I mean by that is, again, not everything's equal when it comes to nodes, okay? So realize that nodes are different and they have very different use cases, requirements. Some, again, are going to be able to perform different tasks. Some are going to order on the blockchain. Some are going to approve. Some are going to validate, right? These are things you probably need to know. I won't go into each of the nodes. That's more for a class than a YouTube video. Number 7, you have to know how to connect a client application to the Hyperledger blockchain. You must know this. You have to know also the transaction flow. Know the flow, my friends. It is what it is. In Hyperledger, it uses, is it a sequential style or a non-sequential style? I'm going to let you figure that out, or you could take my class and I'll tell you. I'll tell you it's one of those two, and you need to know exactly what each of these nodes do when they do it. For example, know the steps of a transaction. There'll be several questions on the flow. Okay, number 8, chain code. You got to know this. Once again, development, chain code, Java, Golang, whatever you're writing your script in. For your chain code, it's up to you. You do want to know certain areas around deploying chain code, like what is chain code. I got a typo, okay? Forgive me. Chain code stub interface, not stib interface. I just realized. Again, I'm rushing this out. It is what it is. It's free. Know what shim is, error returns, etc. I will post this on online. I'll give you the link to download it. I'll update that again. Once again, just wanted to get this out quickly because I've been contacted at least 3 or 4 times in the last 2 weeks. Can you do a video on this? I'm happy to. Again, that's why I'm here. Okay, number 9, you have to know how to declare resources. Composer was definitely a good chunk of the exam. What do I mean by that? As you would expect, it's similar to like Ethereum and Solidity or Mist. And therefore, this is Hyperledger's development baby. You know, this is what it is. This is the framework that's used to help facilitate development with Hyperledger. Another thing to point out too is know how to declare relationships as well. Also too, when I talk about Composer, you know, you got to play around with Composer. I would recommend you know how to import, export as well. You know, there's just so much to Composer to talk about it. I'm going to have a separate video on that to get deeper into it, but just realize it's probably 15% of the questions that you're going to see around Composer, like what's a banana file, what comprises a banana file, what comprises a query file. Again, this is number 9, sort of similar to a previous area, but this is really more focused on just getting to know Composer. Also, too, know the difference between Composer and Composer Playground, right? Fairly straightforward. One is an online cloud utility you could use. The other you could deploy locally. Now, number 10, before we start wrapping this up, you need to know basic blockchain terms. There is, I want to say maybe 5 questions out of 70 were really just basic blockchain knowledge. What is provenance, or actually provenance? How, what is privacy? How do you establish security? What is permission and what is permissionless? What are the basics around this? Now, there's just so much more to talk about. What is consensus, and immutability is another term, right? These are very basic terms that you should already know if you're taking this course or exam. Okay, I do have some courses already online for the CBSA. I do have practice questions for the CBDH as well. There's going to be a live online lesson coming up for CBDH on Pearson Safari. It'll be 8 hours of blockchain fun as well. And for those that are interested in Hyperledger as well, I'm going to put the links for my upcoming courses on Hyperledger and IBM blockchain. Again, lots of great opportunities to learn. I wish you all luck. Check the links below. Keep calm and good luck, my friends.